So thank you for attending tonight's program, Meet Citizen DJ. I'd like to introduce Brian Fu, who is an innovator in residence at the Library of Congress in partnership with LC Labs. He also is a data visualization artist at the American Museum of Natural History and has worked in libraries and museums for nearly a decade, specializing in the visualization of large collections of media for the public. And I'm super excited to make this happen today. Being a DJ is something I enjoy doing myself, so I'm really excited to hear about Citizen DJ. So I'll just go ahead and turn it over to Brian. Thanks for being here, Brian.
All right, thank you for having me, Kevin. So my presentation today, I think I'm going to rely heavily on the tool itself, and I think I'm going to be talking through the lens specifically of the DJ or anybody who wants to use the library's collections to make something new, specifically sample-based music, but really you could kind of use it for anything. And just to kind of give a brief introduction to myself, or let me step back and introduce the program. So I'm actually just finishing up my residency at the Library of Congress, which is hosted by LC Labs as part of their Innovator in Residence program. This is an amazing group within the Library of Congress that really thinks about how to make the digital collections as accessible to the public as possible using emerging technologies and various digital methods to really enhance the user experience and really try to think about new audiences they could reach when they experiment with new ways of exploration and creative reuse. As Kevin mentioned, I've been working in libraries and museums for about a decade. I've worked at the New York Public Library, currently at the American Museum of Natural History, and obviously the Library of Congress. Another relevant fact is that I'm a lifelong b-boy or breakdancer. So this is an image of me about almost 30 years ago doing a breakdance routine with my buddy Amari. And this is me at the Library of Congress doing a breakdancing pose. This is kind of really where the project started in my mind with my love of hip hop and hip hop culture. Back in the early 90s when I was introduced to initially the music of hip hop, but eventually the culture of hip hop, and that includes the four artistic elements of hip hop being emceeing or rapping, DJing, breakdancing or b-boy b-girling, and then graffiti or street art. And then the fifth element is often referred to as knowledge of self and knowledge of history, which also kind of ties into this project really well. But one thing I really loved about hip hop culture, initially as a breakdancer, it really is this really unique art form that is all about referencing, but also kind of remixing, transformation. So breakdancing specifically being this composite of a whole bunch of different references. You have Brazilian dance, capoeira, kung fu, gymnastics, Russian dance, African dance, Russian dance, like all of these things breakdancers take from, but also figure out how to transform and make it into their own. Obviously the dance is very tied to hip hop music, which especially in the early days of hip hop relies heavily on the sample. The DJ is kind of central to this project that the project that I worked on at the Library of Congress called Citizen DJ. And the reason why I centered it around the idea of a DJ is, really referring to this moment in time, especially in the late 80s and early 90s, where DJs would be, digging through crates in record stores and thrift shops and, really trying to find the most obscure sounds from all different eras and all different genres, and just amassing this giant collection of sounds that they would, eventually take and remix and reimagine and transform into something new. And that's kind of the basis of the experience that I wanted to replicate with Citizen DJ, is this idea of crate digging, but also thinking about what is in our collective crate of sounds as citizens of America, or even citizens of the world. Like what are some sonic material in our history and shared culture that should be known and should be accessible to anybody willing to listen to them. So I'll actually just start off with looking at the Library of Congress website as it currently is, just to kind of give a sense of like what my approach was and how I tried to think about how to improve the experience of digging through sounds in the Library of Congress. So maybe just to step back a little bit, the first challenge of this project was to really ask the question to the amazing staff at the library to think about, first and foremost, like what is the audio that is cultural and historically significant that the public should know about and may not know about for a variety of reasons. It might be not accessible, might not be digitized, it just wasn't marketed. And also, and for any DJs who are listening, who are very interested in sampling, probably know that copyright is a huge issue when trying to sample. And I refer to the era of the late 80s and early 90s, generally considered to be the golden age of hip hop, mostly because it was before some of the big landmark lawsuits around copyright for specifically hip hop musicians. So there was this like period of time where you had artists like Public Enemy, De La Soul, albums like Paul's Boutique. Like these are albums that are made up of dozens, if not hundreds, of samples, which would literally be impossible to do today just because of the cost and the amount of people you would need to get permission from. So that was really a big aspect of this project too, is just trying to identify like what are the collections that you can use for free without restriction. So I just want to start with like the interface for the Library of Congress. Typically, if you're looking for sounds to use, for your own mix or something like that, typically what I would be looking for initially is like looking for anything related to any clues about like the audio license. So is there like a facet that allows me just to look at public domain material? And usually there isn't. So that's like the first thing that's absent from most interfaces. The other thing is, often you have, in this case, like pretty good metadata. There's a lot of ways I can filter and facet, but it's pretty challenging to search through this from a sonic point of view. I can go to each individual item and like listen to it. But, the Library of Congress, even just the ones that are online, these are thousands of hours of audio. And, I think one of the biggest challenges for me is like how to really just get a sense of what the library has sonically from like the point of view of a musician or a producer who's interested in not only the content, but also kind of the aesthetics. So like, what is the quality of the sound? What is the timbre? What is the texture, the color? So that was kind of like one of the first things that I thought about. So I'll just start with like a demo and talk through the different ways that I tried to approach solving this problem. So this website that you can see the URL here, this is a completely public free-to-use website that you can try out right now. So this currently contains 8 collections of really pretty rich audio content from all different parts of the library. So we have a pretty diverse range of different types of sounds. So we have sounds that are over 100 years old from the Edison companies. These are some of the earliest recordings on disc. We have things like interviews, oral histories, radio broadcasts, government film. We even have some contemporary music that's free to use. So the goal was to really find, collections that are significant from a cultural and historical point of view, but also like a good diversity of different types of sounds to be raw material for all different types of new music. So just to kind of give you an example of what some of these collections are. So I'm going to just jump into this one collection. So this is the collection that was published in the early 20th century. So this is like, I want to say around 1912 to 1925 or something like that. So these are some of the earliest sounds in disc format. And what you're seeing here is a representation of this collection, which is composed of hundreds of hours of audio. So what you're seeing here is about 4,000 representative clips of this collection. Each clip is kind of a fraction of a second. And the way it's laid out is that each clip that is close to each other in space should sound similar, and the color kind of reinforces that. So I'm just gonna run my cursor over these just to kind of give you a sense of what is in this collection sonically. So I was literally able to kind of browse through hundreds of items of audio or thousands of clips of audio in a few seconds, and that really kind of gives me a sense of what type of audio is in here. And from what you've heard, it's like a mix of like opera, some probably musicals and comedic sketches and things like that. And as I mentioned before, in certain areas, because these things are grouped by sonic similarity, if I run my cursor in certain areas, it should sound similar. So this area sounds like, where all the opera is. And up here, it sounds like a mix of everything up here. So this really kind of utilizes some of my computer science background. All this stuff was done more or less automatically. Like I didn't manually do any of this stuff other than write the code that generates it. It's also important to note as I'm running my browser over these clips, you'll see on the bottom where that particular sound comes from. So if I find like an interesting sound that I like, I could see where it comes from. So this particular sound comes from Hungarian Rag, made in 1914, and this particular sample, I'll play it in context. And you could actually go directly to the library's website to listen to the whole thing. So this particular sample starts at 3 minutes and 15 seconds in. So let me just go there. And here I could actually download the full WAV file that this particular sound comes from and listen to the whole thing. So this comes in a little later. And obviously you can also learn a lot more about the context of this particular piece of audio. A couple other features that I'll highlight is that I have this tab that allows you to kind of filter by some of the metadata that the library provides. So here I can just highlight, certain subjects, and this data I have directly from the library data. So I can highlight everything that's marked as humor, for example, and just play those. So you can hear it sounds a lot like comedic sketches. I could also, like, again, from like a musician's point of view, I can also just highlight everything in the musical note of C. And again, this was kind of done automatically, so it may not be perfect, but it's approximate. So if I'm working on a particular chord, this might be helpful. I could also like just filter down to the lower pitch sounds. So I got to go down really low. And just to kind of give you a sense of the diversity of the different types of collections. So this is obviously a collection of really old sounds. Let's just go to, so there's another collection that has much more contemporary sounds. This is from the Free Music Archive. So let's play this. A lot more of synthetic electronic music. Clear. And just to kind of give one more example. So this is a collection of oral histories. This is a pretty amazing collection that I encourage you to listen to. So this is a collection from the American Folklife Center that was collected as this effort to document kind of the diversity of language, or specifically American dialects in America. So these are oral histories from people all over the country that also just tell their stories. And I'll just kind of quickly brush over, and you'll hear it's a very different type of experience. One interesting thing I noticed is that this area is where all the S's are. So that might actually work well with like a percussion sample. Collection. So the more fun tool that I created. So the idea is that once you find a particular sample that you like, so let me just look for a sample that I like. Maybe this one. So this is a sample from Introduction and Tarantelle, created in 1921. So the idea is that once you find a sample that you like, you could go into this other tool. I call it the remix tool. And what it does is that it takes this particular sample and puts it onto this musical sequence that loops. And this is a pretty recognizable type of tool. So the idea is that you can kind of plug in a particular pattern, and then it'll just loop. So let me just you could also add drums, but I'm gonna mute that for now, just so you could hear the sample. Let's speed it up a little bit. And then I'm going to slowly add the drums. And then switch up the drums. Change up the pattern. And I could actually shuffle the item itself, so if I don't like this particular sample, I can change that up. I can make it sound like maybe like a more techno thing, so let's do or you could download each individual sample that I kind of pre-cut. You could also edit that particular sample too. So if I could take it from a different part of the song, or increase it or decrease it, and download that particular clip as a WAV file that you could kind of bring into your own music production software. Also, you can actually download this loop as an individual WAV file that you could, again, bring it into your own music production software. Or you can record like an on-the-fly session. And for people who are more experienced, you can download the original, where the original source came from. So you can actually go to the Library of Congress and download the full WAV file where this particular sound comes from. And then you could just chop it up yourself. And in addition to that, we also have a way, so you can actually download the entire collection of audio clips. So these are the 4,000 clips from the first interface that I showed you, as well as a couple hundred excerpts from this particular collection. And you could download that all in bulk in MP3 or WAV format. And this is kind of using the idea of like a sample pack that, again, you could kind of bring that in to your music production software. I could actually just pull up an example of what that would look like. So let's see. I think I have some preset thing. So this is this is just browsing some of the excerpts. And you can just kind of do the same thing I did in the other interface, in your own music production software. So you could start to add more interesting effects and things like that. And one other thing I'll note is that in addition to the sounds that you hear on this website, which is all completely free to use, I also provide like a general guide that allows you to kind of go beyond Citizen DJ, and this kind of gives you like a relatively easy to use guide for navigating copyright in terms of digital sampling, which is a very, very tricky area. And that was kind of like a big part of my my work at the library, was trying to figure all of that out. Even with all of the resources that the library had, it was still very complicated. In addition to that, I also include an area that also talks about the ethics of sampling, which is, I think not necessarily the opposite side of the coin, but it's another thing to think about that doesn't necessarily, it isn't necessarily consistent with what's available from a copyright point of view. There are a lot of things in the library that may be free to use from a copyright perspective, but may require some kind of deeper consideration, or kind of more critical thinking about what are kind of the ethical ways they can be used. And I think these are specifically around the unpublished work of largely underrepresented groups in the history of the sound recording in America. So a lot of this stuff includes collections from the American Folklife Center that were collected as field recordings across America. The Alan Lomax collection is a popular example of that. And I think it's important to understand the context that some of these things were collected from. Oftentimes, specifically, the Lomaxes would collect, work songs from prisoners who are working in fields, who are in a chain gang. And they personally saw this as a way to kind of document that, and also to kind of critique that particular practice. They actually wrote letters to the governor to protest that type of thing. But I think it's important, when you listen to that new work and think about, or listen to that existing work and think about how you can make new work from it. I think it's important to kind of think about the different ways you can preserve that context. So, things around attribution, not only attributing the original creator, in which, in a lot of cases, might not be known, but also to kind of give credit to the context of how, if there's a particular project or person that collected that audio, if there was kind of a mission behind it, it's good to kind of keep that context. If there is any way to compensate the creator or the descendants of those creators, especially if the creator, again, was not compensated during their lifetime, or if the work was unpublished, it might be useful to try to understand or learn how to compensate potential descendants of a particular creator, especially if you're making money from that new work. And then obviously there's like the big area of just thinking about cultural and historical context, and this kind of gets into issues of cultural appropriation, and just general respect for existing work. And yeah, so I'll kind of briefly talk about some of the design process, in addition to the tool itself. So we actually were able to launch this tool late April. We launched kind of like a preview of this tool, just to kind of get context from, just to kind of get feedback from and anybody interested in using these particular tools. So these might be producers, these might be educators, students. We were anticipating maybe a few hundred people to try it out, but we ended up with over 100,000 people trying it out in just over a couple weeks. So we were able to get a whole bunch of feedback, and I can kind of brush on a couple of the highlights, but I think one of the big things was, it seemed like it was very relevant to people, and a lot of people identified as artists or creative types, which is, I think, really big for us. I think in addition to a lot of the coverage we got from, just well-known publications, I think what was even more a mark of success was we got a long tail of coverage from a lot of niche broadcasts or niche outlets that focus on specific communities, whether they're musicians or sound engineers or EDM producers. I think it struck a chord with a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. This kind of gives this is just one of the feedback that we got from somebody. I think this really sums up what I think was successful about this project. I think one thing that was nice to hear, but it wasn't really all that expected, was the fact that I think they felt that what we made was for them, and the fact that it was coming from the Library of Congress was surprising. And I think that's because often we think about government or our government as maybe not doing things that may be relevant to you, especially if you're a hip hop artist or something like that. So I think we got a lot of comments about specifically talking about the hip hop context and the fact that we really grounded this project in that context of hip hop. And I think it's also important to mention that hip hop started from disenfranchised groups, specifically in the Bronx, specifically Black and Latino people, young people who kind of used this art form and culture as a means to speak, to have a voice in a culture and society in which they didn't really have one. So I think it's really important to kind of always bring it back to that that particular context, and then just we hear a lot from just producers who would actually use this for making actual music, which I think was like the most rewarding part of this process, is to listen to the new music being made through this. We got a whole bunch of different feedback, but I won't get into too much. But I think the good thing was that a lot of the negative things we heard was just people frustrated that they didn't have like the feature they wanted, because they expected those types of features, just because they're so used to existing DAWs and music production software. So I think it was more that they kind of understood what this is about. I think they just wanted more, which is pretty cool. I'll also just mention that we also collaborated with a couple different nonprofit organizations from across the country. One from Detroit, one from Chicago, and one in Miami. These are groups that used hip hop as a way to engage with their students. And these are students of all ages, I think spanning from middle school all the way to pre to early professional. I think all these different groups took a slightly different approach, but they used hip hop as a way to kind of teach about everything from, learning about history, learning about, your own self-identity, to learning about social justice, to obviously learning actual music production. And the fact that this was an online resource was really useful for them, because they often would be doing a lot of their work in person, which they couldn't do that during this time. We also collaborated with the amazing DJ Kid Koala, who took some of the new work that the students made and made this like really amazing mega mix of the new work being made. So it was this interesting idea of all this new work being made from all this existing material, and then Kid Koala he pressed all of those tracks to vinyl, and then he performed it. And I think I can play a little excerpt from that. Let me just... So I think it was really cool just to kind of think about all the different transformations that happened throughout this process. Obviously the existing material already was transformed in many different ways, like the early Edison materials were obviously transformed from its physical format to digital, to an online format, into Citizen DJ, which is a digital tool, and then into somebody's music production software, back onto vinyl, back into this digital format, and then into this presentation. So like I think that really kind of sums up this idea of this innovation through transformation and remixing, and this kind of originality and kind of new material when you have these source material available. I also had the pleasure to make my own album from the Citizen DJ tool, and you could listen to this on SoundCloud. I could send links later, but I'll just play an excerpt So actually, I'm gonna maybe do it. I'll play the original source. So this is from a 1921 recording, so almost 100 years ago. So this is from a item called Old Pal. Why don't you answer me? So I think this one in particular, I tried to really transform it as much as I can while still retaining the original sample. So I think the original sample I don't really manipulate that much in terms of the actual audio, but I chop it up and kind of splice it together with some drums, and this is what it sounds like. I'll just play one more example. So this is from one of the students from Class Act Detroit. She produced this piece based on a more contemporary collection, the Free Music Archive, and I'll play the original recording. This is the remix one. It's very transformative. Also very Detroit here. And yeah, and I think the even though my residency's over, you know, Citizen DJ is sticking around. There isn't. I can't speak to very specific plans for what's next, but I think some things I definitely want to highlight that are known is that first off is that Citizen DJ itself, the underlying software as well as the interface itself is open source. And the idea is that we would ideally be able to enable other institutions and other organizations who have audio of their own, that they can use the Citizen DJ tools to open access to their audio for their patrons or audience. Also, on January 1st, 2022, will be the first public domain day for sound recordings. So this will be the first time that sound recordings actually go into the public domain. And this will be, you know, tens of thousands of audio recordings in the Library of Congress alone. And that's only the audio that's online. So there's going to be tons and tons and tons of audio that will be available in Citizen DJ and beyond. And that's something to look out for as well. And here's just a bunch of links to Citizen DJ, to labs, the open source repository, as well as my contact information. And that's about it. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. That was an amazing program. I'm blown away. I'm just excited to that again, like the comment you had before that you shared with us with the expletives, you know, really sums it up. I mean, it's really great. Yeah. It's wow. I'm really thrilled that we got to see it. I'm thrilled that you have the chance to create this, and I can see it living on in libraries, you know, beyond, like you said, your residency.
Yeah.
So
I hope so.
Well, I appreciate it. So people can contact you, put your information up there if they have any questions. Yes. And really, thanks for taking the time to talk to us about Citizen DJ at the Library of Congress. All right. Have a great day.
My pleasure.